Hey, Kelly.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of Work Your Network. I'm a part of my network for a few years now. We work together at a small little insurance company in Phoenix. And I'm so glad we've stayed connected all these years. You, for one, I really appreciated, your way of just seeking out opportunities. You love to challenge yourself at work, right? And
Yeah.
strive for growth. What do you tell yourself to keep pushing and to really, embrace change, as you climb the ladder?
So I've just found that change is going to happen, and you have the choice to either embrace it or fight it, and fighting it is not going to benefit you.
Right. Yeah.
um, and being proactive in trying to determine what you want in your career, in your life. Uh, it just helps you to be able to make a plan for the change that you want to see happen. So, just like any other goals that you set for yourself, setting goals for your career is important for your education. Um, those kind of things are things that you have control over. So, being able to get your degree, for example, you and I had talked about that. That was something that was a big goal that I had set for myself, to get my bachelor's degree. And the motivation behind it was being able to move it ahead in my career to provide for my family. And I had made that determination that I was going to do that. When it comes to your career, you can set those same kind of goals too. One of the questions I always asked whenever I was looking for new positions, or even within positions that I had, what's the next step for this role? Because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to get there.
That's a good question. Yeah. And I don't know if we all ask that. I'm gonna write that one down. What's the next before I even get started, where is this going?
Yes. I'm just not the type of person who's going to be satisfied doing the same thing for years and years and years and years. I have an understanding that you have to get to a point where you have the background, the knowledge, the connections, all of that part of your career that you need to excel in the position that you have before you're probably ready to jump into something new. So I get that. Everything takes time. But I don't want to be in the same spot 10 years later. Usually not even 5 years later.
You kind of make me think of like dating. You start a relationship. Some of us, we ask like, okay, do you want to get married? Like, don't waste my time if this isn't going somewhere, right? It's like you got your list of like first date questions. What do you want? And then, you kind of like take a look at, the answers, and you decide if you want a second date. But if it's not going to go anywhere, this is just a casual thing. You might rethink, where you want it to go. Yeah.
And I mean, if that's what you're looking for, that's fine. I will admit, and this is probably true of a lot of people, when you're younger, you're dating just to have fun and go out and do things.
Yeah, you don't really care.
And I feel like with your career, in the beginning, it kind of has that same feel. It's not a career necessarily, it's a job.
It's a job.
But as you get older, it's been my experience anyway, that a career changes into a part of who you are.
Oh.
And so that being a piece of you, because it is, if you think about it, when people ask you about yourself, where's one of the first things you say? It's what you do for a living.
It's such a big part of your life. We spend so much time at work.
You know, that identifies you.
Yep. I think there's a statistic work takes up, I want to say like 33% of our lifespan. So yeah, it's a big chunk of just how we identify ourselves because it takes up that much of our life. That's a great point. And I wanted to talk a little bit about when you said that you had this goal to go to school because you wanted to take care of your family, all these other things. But for you, it wasn't easy. You experienced a lot of setbacks as there were some, you know, just like all of us, crazy things that happened along the way. In those moments where you could have given up, but you didn't, what was the driver? Like, you have this goal in front of you, you had to take a few steps back, then what?
So I think a key thing to remember is, like you mentioned, all of us have setbacks. There are things that happen in our lives, and sometimes they're just little bumps in the road, and sometimes they are major that impact what you can do.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself a little bit of grace as part of that. So if you are in a spot where right now all you can do is barely take care of yourself, now is not the time to put all this pressure on yourself that, oh my gosh, I've got this long list of things I need to get done. It's time to take care of yourself for a minute. And I think COVID kind of brought that home for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. The need to be able to separate out sometimes and focus on making sure you're okay and that you can be there, for your family, be there for yourself and figure out what you want and what you need in order to take that next step and move forward. So for me, that was kind of a big deal, was I had to stop for a minute and breathe and say, look, I've got to just take a step back for a second. I'm not giving up on my goal. I just need a minute to get some of the other pieces of my life in order before I can jump right back into this. And so that's what I did. Then when I decided, I gave myself a deadline because I needed to.
Okay.
And at that deadline, then I was back in it.
Yeah.
Just head on, and there was no stepping back. There was no stopping me because I had made that commitment. I took the time I needed, and I was ready.
That's so good. I love having a deadline. It's like, I'm going to give myself a minute here, but by the end of the year, we're back on track. Okay. So we've both worked for some very interesting leaders. You just can't help but laugh, right? Some good, some bad, some in the middle somewhere. So just, thinking about your career, who are some of the leaders that were just amazing leaders, that you got to work for? You think back and you're like, this one really made an impact. And then conversely, I want you to think in the back of your mind, like, okay, this person I don't want anything to do with for the rest of my life. But what are the differences?
I tend to, it's like you said, you're going to run into a variety of leadership styles, individuals across the board. So my favorite boss that I ever had was pretty early in my career. And I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about her as a manager because she was in a position where she was not my manager, and they made some changes to departmental structures, and I ended up reporting to her. And I just wasn't sure how I felt about it.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that there had to be some trust that was built between the two of us. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't that hard because I am somebody who I really want to do the best I possibly can, and I want to work as hard as I can for the success of the team, the organization, everything. And that is just kind of built into me.
Right.
So she recognized that. And she recognized, I was young and hungry And she recognized that too. And she kind of pushed me to try new things. And beyond that, she had trust in me to do the things. So I said, just as an example, I was managing events for the organization, and everything was being managed on paper and through spreadsheets. There wasn't a real system in place for it, and I went to her with a proposal to incorporate an online registration for all of our events going forward. So we would utilize this because we had hundreds of people attending these events with multiple events as part of the main event that was happening. So it was 3 days worth of things going on, from activities to classes, dinners, just all kinds of stuff. And we needed a system, and especially a system that could be live. Yeah. So I went to her with this proposal, and I wasn't sure exactly how it would go because they had never done this before. And her response was, if you think this will work, I am letting you go with it. Yes, I will sign off on it. We'll budget for it. I trust you that this is going to be a successful endeavor, or you wouldn't have come to me with it.
That's great.
And that was just how our relationship worked. So as long as I had the backup to what I wanted to do, to kind of prove my point for what the necessity was, I never got pushed back. And her philosophy, which I kind of carried with me, and I remember I said it to you when we had worked together before, was it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yes, you did.
So that kind of plays into my work style of, I want to get things done. I'm not happy sitting around and waiting. I want to move forward. I want to see things get accomplished. And sometimes that means I have to kind of jump out in front. Oh, and so my worst one?
Yeah.
Well,
that was the good one.
This was my first real job. I had a couple of bosses that there was a lot of changeover, and I had a couple of bosses that were great, but then I ended up reporting to somebody that he wasn't great. And I, of course, within about 6 months of reporting to him, I went in and said, I'm interested in what my next steps are. And, I'd like to talk to you about what I'm working on and what I can do to move to the next level. And he told me, I don't know what you do, and I can tell you went about this all wrong. You shouldn't have even asked me about this. You should have waited for me to do it. And I knew right then this wasn't going to work. And
not only did he didn't know what you did, but he didn't want you to ask him anything either.
Yeah. So that saying that you don't quit a company, you quit your boss, that's kind of true.
Oh, yeah.
Because I liked the company I worked for, and I did like my job. But I can't work for somebody that really has no vested interest in me and my success.
I've had that feeling several times. Where I'm like,
that's the key to a good leader, is that you care about the success of the people that are part of your team. It's not just about you. It's when they're doing well, so are you.
Yeah. When you think about your career and the type of leaders that you encounter, sometimes, kind of like what you said, you can quit the company or the leader. I forget how you exactly phrased it, but it's really true. Like, there's been many times where I'm like, I like this job, but I don't want to work with you. So I'm looking for the next exit. It's like, it's either me or you. Which one is it going to be? And I've been fortunate, so grateful that sometimes it's, it's the boss, essentially. And I get to stay. I get to stay where I'm happy. They end up leaving for one reason or the other. And we were just talking recently, and you said that you just landed a new role. Yay! After being unemployed for quite a while, like so many people. I need to say that because there are people who are unemployed and they are long-term unemployed for months. So when you land a job, it is really worth celebrating. So I really, really want to celebrate you in this moment because it is an accomplishment. But with that being said, you told me that you get to work with a team of go-getters. So I want you to explain to me like what that means for you, Kelly.
So, as you mentioned, I was a long-term unemployed person, and I had the luxury of being a little bit selective on the positions that I applied for. So when I applied for this role, I met with the team initially. So it would be my manager, and then the person I would be working with, that was my peer, and just clicked right away. And then when I actually came in and met all of the people that are part of my team, I was just so impressed with the amount of knowledge, the drive, just the fact that they are excited every day about the things that they're doing. They want to make a difference in the community. They want to be able to impact other people and, to make the best possible product and quickly. So it's just all of these things that to me are kind of just perfect.
Yeah.
It's a great environment to be in when you're surrounded by other people that really want to do a great job. And that's what they show up for every day.
It sounds like a good fit for you.
Inspiring.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I can't wait to hear more about how things progress. You just started, so you're just getting your feet wet, but congratulations. I do want to ask you one more thing, because we talked a little bit about this. You're going to be kind of like a hybrid employee. And, so many companies are asking folks to come back in the office, right? The whole return to office movement. Me, for one, I cannot imagine working back in the office. I'm just going to say that out loud publicly. I just can't imagine. But it has its place. And so I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on full-time in the office, hybrid, remote work? What's your preference? And what do you think about this RTO movement, return to office movement, that's happening?
So I've done all of those things. So I was, the position where we worked together, I was in the office every day because that was required of where I was at in that role. Then, of course, COVID, and everybody was a remote worker. For the most part, unless you were an essential worker, you were working from home.
Yep.
And that was unique. And then the next job I got, it was remote, and there was no plan, and there was an office that was within 30 minutes of my house, but my boss said nobody's coming into the office, so don't plan on it. I've already said we're not going to, so I was fully remote for that role. In my new position, I am hybrid. My feelings about it are, I don't mind a mix. I do appreciate the flexibility of having both the ability to work from home and to come into the office. I like having the face-to-face with some of my coworkers sometimes, and now that we're not in a COVID situation anymore, it's a nice thing to be able to get together once in a while and, have a lunch or have a meeting, like an all-hands meeting, and just talk about everything that's going on with everybody and have it be in person. That said, you can still do all of that remotely. There are plenty of people and plenty of teams that work 100% remote.
Yes.
And still get things done. And I feel like that this kind of, the pandemic and everything kind of proved that remote is functional. People still get work done.
People get work done.
And So, I mean, I understand where you're coming from with not wanting to go back into the office. And I was, kind of spoiled with not going back in. But I'm not mad about it. I don't mind the being in the office and having kind of a split schedule of in office and working from home. It works for me.
We're coming to the office, it has its benefits, right? Like you get that social interaction, you get to kind of brainstorm and whiteboard in person. Those things can give you energy. I worked for a company where I never went to the office. I never met any of my coworkers in person. It was 100% remote during my time there. And I don't think I missed out on anything. I feel like I still ran company meetings just as effective as if I was in the office. I still did meaningful work. And I guess now, I mean, I know you said you were kind of spoiled. I guess I just almost feel like for me, what's the point? because I was able to do a top-notch job from my office at home. I don't want to be forced to come into the office. But, I'm glad that companies, in some instances, give folks at least the option, because everyone has different needs, right? Some people want that, in-person experience. Some people like, being home where they can just zone in and don't have distractions. And some people need a little bit of a balance. They need a little bit of a mix. When companies offer a few different choices, I think that's fair.
Well, and it's about, the work hours too. So flexibility, not just in the hybrid model, but also everybody doesn't work 8:30 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that's a nice thing to be able to, let your employees maybe choose an earlier shift, or maybe come in just a little bit later, depending on what their needs are and what's going on in their lives, because the work-life balance, and that's something I really appreciate about my new company, is the work-life balance is very important to them. And the expectation is that you work your time, but that you also have the, freedom to enjoy your life after work.
Yeah.
You're not on call 24/7 for everything, at least not where, in the role I'm at.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the work-life balance piece of it very much.
Yeah.
And, so I was going to ask you, talking about you had mentioned to me earlier that you are doing some teaching now. What if they wanted you to come in and teach at school? Would you be interested in doing that?
That's a good question.
I'm putting you on the spot.
You are. I think that, gosh, I've wanted to teach for so long. I would do what it took to land that role. If it was probably a different opportunity, I don't know if I would have that same feeling, but that particular opportunity means so much to me. I would make that sacrifice. Yeah, I think it's just about, how bad you want it, I guess. I would say if it was a corporate job and I had the option to keep looking and, weigh, some different determinators, I might have to say, I'll keep looking, which I have. Like, there's been some hybrid jobs, but they come with a very long commute. And I'm like, my work-life balance is so much more important to me that I don't want to drive 2 hours to and from work, that I'll keep looking for another opportunity. And I think maybe you mentioned COVID. COVID's kind of changed our perspective on self-care. What do we need to put ourselves first, to put our families first? So now we're thinking about work in a very different way, where it's not like I'm just going to take the opportunities as they come. I'm also going down my checklist, just kind of like what we were talking about dating, is like, does this job meet my needs? I don't think so. And we talked about how some jobs come up and we need to swipe left. You know, I swipe left on these jobs that are too far away. I don't want to drive far.
Well, and I did that when I was looking for work too, where so you look at the Glassdoor reviews, you look at the things like the commute, that kind of thing, and there were positions that I declined, further interviews because of those things.
Yeah.
And so it is a lot of it. And so to get to your point about, you would consider changing your thought process about being, in office when it came to a teaching role, the job itself and the culture of the organization and all of the things that are wrapped up in that job kind of influence whether or not you're willing to be in office or hybrid too. It's not just the commute or just the job itself. There's a lot that plays into it.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot that goes into it to make that decision. So that was a good question. I appreciate that. Well, that is it for this episode of Work Your Network with Callie. Thank you so much. And until the next time.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Definitely subscribe if you want to catch more episodes of Work Your Network. They're definitely coming your way. And if you want to learn more about me, Career Coach CJ, check me out on Instagram.